Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the well-caffeinated, aspiring to be viral, never to be lightning delayed, we hope, weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football and its seemingly endless injury reports. I'm Eric Hansen, still in my TV clothes. He's Tyler James, still in his car shopping clothes. Tonight we'll break down the latest injury bombshell regarding All-America cornerback Benjamin Morrison, where the Irish go with the back end of their defense without him. We'll have even more injury updates if that's possible and if I don't stumble. And we'll discuss some players returning from injuries who can make a big difference. We'll gauge Notre Dame's offensive progress after a banner day for Riley Leonard in the passing game against a Stanford defense that doesn't have too many of those. We'll have scads of recruiting news, including 2 clip commitments. And we'll take your questions live, so start filling up the queue. This is
Football Never Sleeps.
All right. Well, Football Never Sleeps is here. I don't know that I'm awake, but we are ready to go. Football Never Sleeps is presented by MyBookie. Sunday is the one day of the week I get to think about football that has nothing to do with work. I love tuning into the NFL, cheering on the Chicago Bears, and trying to pick winners from other games across the league. And yesterday that made for quite the good start to the day with the way the Bears played. And now I'm turning to MyBookie because it's the one book that has your back. No fluff, no second guessing, just straight up action with the decisions in your hands as you try to make an edge. Maybe you have your eyes on a money line, or there's a game total that you're sold will go under. MyBookie has what you need to make a good wager. And MyBookie has hooked us up with a deal for our Football Never Sleeps viewers. Sign up with promo code INDS to double your first deposit of up to $1,000 with a 100% deposit bonus. So click the link in our video description below and remember to use code INDS to take advantage of this incredible deal. Bet anything, anytime, from anywhere with MyBookie, the sports book that gives you the control. All right. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to us here on our YouTube channel, which is free. That allows you to get questions in during the show, and make sure you don't miss any of the content that we're rolling out here on YouTube. You can also sign up for a 30-day free trial to InsideNDSports.com with promo code NDYT. That will get you access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time. Our community shares all their opinions, and we drop our inside information there first. I wanted to thank everyone who is chiming in tonight. Apologies for the late start. A lot of news today. I've been feel like I've been nonstop writing about breaking news today and the latest Notre Dame's football quarterback commitment flip from Clemson, Blake Hebert. So we'll get into that later. But I'm ready to go as best I can. We want to hear from you in the comments, whether you're watching live or on replay. So even if you're watching us later in the week, let's hear what you think. And all right, let's have a good show, Eric.
okay. And this segment is brought by MyKeurig.com.
We need to get Keurig to start writing us checks.
That's right. They need to start kicking something in.
As all of you have most certainly learned by now, Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison is out for the rest of the year with a hip injury that will require surgery. Eric, do you think it's possible to overstate the magnitude of this loss for Notre Dame?
Well, we'll certainly try. I mean, here's the thing with Ben Morrison. It hurts you in 2 ways. You go from maybe the best or second best cornerback in all of college football, I think you can make that argument, to a really, really, really good freshman. But that's still a step down no matter how you slice it. I remember sitting with Ben Morrison in the middle of August and him saying, you know what, I think Leonard Moore is going to have a better career than me, and he's going to be better here and have a more of an impact eventually, but not in 2024. The other part where it hurts, Tyler, is the sheer numbers game. I mean, you are down now to a freshman and sophomore starting at corner. Your third corner now has 25 college plays under his belt, basically. And your fourth corner last, other than a few snaps in the Louisville game, last played outside cornerback his freshman year at Arizona State, and he's now a graduate student. So they are thin. They're one injury away from having to make some bigger moves involving players and possibly disrupting, the best or the fifth best pass defense in the country, which could very well end up being number one at the end of the year. But yeah, it's huge. The great thing is Leonard Moore has been really, really good for a freshman. The bad news is he's still not a junior at Ben Morrison's caliber.
If Notre Dame finishes with the number one passing defense at the end of this year, I think Al Golden and Mike Mickens should both be head coaches somewhere next year, because that would be quite the feat with everything that they've gone through in the secondary.
Yeah, and what's Georgia Tech, which we'll get into their injury situation, they've got one of their own they're dealing with, not quite as serious, but certainly to a key player on the offense. You have them and Army and Navy are 1 and 2 in pass efficiency right now, which is hilarious, given that fact that they're such run-oriented programs. But they're both ranked in the top 25. They're in the same poll for the first time since 1960, the year this house was built and the year I was built.
Yeah, that's quite a long time ago. Sorry to age you in your house, Eric, but we can state the facts there. What are your thoughts in terms of how prepared Carson Hobbs is to step up as this third cornerback? Do you think he will be capable of whatever's thrown his way?
No, but I think he's moving in that direction. I mean, I had a chance to talk to him right before he enrolled in June, and he was pretty confident about what he'd be able to accomplish this summer. And he thought he was going to come in as an outside cornerback. And then they quickly moved him to nickel. They needed some depth at nickel, thought he could handle it with his length and his speed. And so he really trained there for the whole summer, fall camp, into the season, and really has just recently started moving back out to outside corner. And so, yeah, they put him on the front burner now, but I think it's still going to take some time for him to adjust. The good thing about it is he is a really good athlete. He has really good attributes in terms of his length and his speed. But Leonard Moore was just ahead of the game in terms of both where he was physically and where he was mentally. And that's why he was able to be so effective as a freshman. He had some Ben Morrison vibes about him. What's your confidence level in Carson Hobbs? You followed him more in recruiting.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. I mean, who are we to discount Mike Mickens' ability to get a freshman ready to go when needed, because he seemingly does that every year. But we'll see if he can do that with two guys in the same year. But I liked Leonard Moore's ability. I think we talked about it in the offseason of who of the two freshmen, if needed, would be more ready. And I always thought that it would be Leonard Moore. Leonard Moore has surpassed my expectations for him. I'm not going to pretend that I thought he would be this good right away. But Carson Hobbs was someone that I know Notre Dame was high on. He was a 3-star in the Rivals rankings, and I heard plenty about that. Some folks at Notre Dame thinking that he should be a 4-star recruit. They flipped him out of South Carolina's class, and South Carolina usually has pretty good cornerbacks. So we haven't been able to see a lot from Carson Hobbs during his early Notre Dame career, but I think we're probably going to see quite a bit more of him moving forward, unless Notre Dame decides that moving Jordan Clark as the outside cornerback is to the outside cornerback is a better proposition for them. Do you think that's possible, feasible, wise? What are your thoughts on the chances of that being the next step before Hobbs being thrown in there as a potential starter if Notre Dame got to that point?
Well, I mean, it was a tell in the Louisville game that they did that instead of putting Carson Hobbs in the game, but they hadn't worked him there, nor had they necessarily worked Jordan Clark out there. When I asked Marcus Freeman about it, he wasn't real forthcoming as to just how many reps he did or didn't have there before going out there, but they had the confidence that Jordan would be able to handle it on the fly. And Louisville had some good receivers, so it wasn't like, he was going against average or below average receivers. But I thought that was telling that in that game, that's the move they made. It would be a shame to do that because I don't think it's a simple move. It would be great if you could say, you know what, Rod Hurd doesn't play a ton of reps at safety. There's some good young safeties. Why don't you move Rod Hurd to the outside? But it feels like you move Rod Hurd to nickel and you move Jordan Clark to corner. And I had to vote on the AP midseason All-American team last night. And I was looking through because the stats don't tell you the whole story. So I do kind of try to look at Pro Football Focus. And Jordan Clark is one of the highest ranked nickels in the country in terms of his film grades. And so it would be a real shame, I think, to move him. I mean, I even considered, if they had a nickel position, I would consider voting for him.
Yeah, I don't know what the best course of action would be. I think sometimes you can think that you can sort of hide someone at the slot position because you're going to have maybe some more safety help. But I think with the way so many offenses can work, if you're facing a good passing offense, now certainly like some of these things don't apply when Notre Dame's going against Army and Navy and stuff like that. But when you're going against modern offenses that are trying to spread you out and do creative things, they're more and more you can put your best receiver in the slot role and move him around and get mismatches and put those guys in a tough spot. So I don't know that I want to weaken that spot for Notre Dame. But I don't know if that's what they'll feel would be most prudent. A lot will be determined by what Carson Hobbs is able to do.
Right. All these games are important. You mentioned the unconventional offenses of Army and Navy, and Navy is throwing the ball more than they have. But the game I think where this would show up the most is USC, and that does give you some time for Carson to be more up to speed by then. But again, you don't know if you're going to be fully healthy at that point in the season either. I mean, just one more injury and it's cross your fingers and all that stuff.
Jay Golden asks, can we get Jaden Mickey back from the student section?
Somebody else asked me that today. I mean, he seemed committed to doing this. I mean, he's had a couple of instances where his presence back on the team would help. I feel like Jaden made this decision based on what he thinks is going to happen next year, that he wouldn't have been a starter next year. And so he wanted to have 2 years at wherever he was going to transfer to. I mean, that's a reversible thing. I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's probable that it happens, but there would be no rule against it to ask him to come back. And he would certainly be helpful. That would be a huge help. The question, though, is, Tyler, would you automatically think he starts ahead of Leonard Moore at this point, given that Leonard now has a start under his belt and played really well?
I don't think so. And I think that's probably, I think Leonard Moore's role is probably the biggest reason Jaden Mickey made the decision that he made, because he felt like even if one of these guys goes down, I don't think I'm the next guy. I think it would be a very bad precedent to bring a guy that essentially, I mean, I understand Jaden Mickey's decision. I don't have a problem with the decision that he made, but for him to have an opportunity to come back on the team after not practicing with the team, I mean, he essentially quit the team. Like that's like we talk about it in different terms, but that's what happened. He has not been with Notre Dame's football team for the past few weeks since he made that decision. Like that would be a real downer for those guys that he would be maybe jumping ahead. Even if you're a walk-on, you're like, hey, I've been out here busting my butt.
Isaiah Dunn. Yeah.
If you're someone like that, like that would, I don't know how I'd feel about that if I were in that position. So I think it's unlikely to happen, but like you said, there's nothing that prohibits it by rule from happening. But it doesn't seem like something that would be in the best interest of program culture to bring someone back that made that decision.
Speaking of walk-ons, if they did dip into the walk-on, do you think they would go Isaiah Dunn, or do you think they go to Max Hurleman? Because Max played a few reps at cornerback in the Stanford game. Now, he was a running back at Colgate, so
Right.
he hasn't played defensive back since high school, but I'm curious what you think if they go Dunn or Max Hurleman.
I my guess would be Hurleman, just because
Yeah.
like they seem to really like what he does. Not that they don't like Isaiah Dunn. He's someone that gets mentioned a lot in terms of a scout team player. But Hurleman's getting reps on Saturdays, even if it's not at cornerback, when they're putting him
Right.
at punt return. So there's, I think, a built-in
And on
trust.
some of the other special teams.
Yeah. So there's a built-in trust there, probably. So that would be my guess, but I don't think Notre Dame wants to have to turn to any of those options if it has its way. But we're getting pretty close to Notre Dame having to make some kind of decisions like that. Circling back to Morrison himself, do you think this opens the door for him to return next season?
Yeah, I think I saw that question in the question portal here too.
Yeah, here we go. Here's Smoking Scott.
We'll give Smoking Scott the credit there. I don't think he would come back. I think this would be kind of like a Kyle Hamilton situation where he's basically done at Notre Dame, that he's got enough on film that he would be drafted pretty high. I don't think that he's got a lot to show. If you said, if there's somebody that I know that a lot of Notre Dame fans would hope that kids would, but I want to come back and win a national championship. And if there's a guy that would almost do that storyline, it would be Ben Morrison. But I still think, given, that he has relatives that have played in the NFL and know the business, I think he has played his last game at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm curious. I don't know enough about the injury. Like we don't have much information about what happened when it happened. There's nothing visible. I went back and watched the third quarter, which was the last time he played, and I didn't see anything. Now that was just TV copy. Maybe there's something that happened off camera that you can't see. But I think the last play he was in was a third down sack that Riley Mills had. And then there was one series in the later in the third quarter when Notre Dame's up 42-7, where he was no longer in the game. I don't think Morrison plays on punt return. I didn't see him on the punt return units in the third quarter. So I don't know where or when that injury happened. I wonder if it's something that's been bugging him and has been maybe getting worse, because we have seen him miss some time this season and go to the locker room sort of for a little bit and then come back.
Yeah.
So you wonder if.
And this new injury policy is really kind of it's like the Jenga game. Sometimes you're pulling pieces out and hoping it doesn't fall on you.
Oh yeah, it just keeps falling on me. But so
that's why you don't have a tie on. You don't want to get it dirty.
So more like. So maybe I wonder if Morrison's decision was it his decision? Was it the doctor told him to do this? Does this season-ending surgery have anything to do with getting him ready for the NFL draft? I think that we can't rule that out. So to me, that doesn't, because he had the surgery or is due to have surgery. I don't think that means that he's someone that would necessarily be like, okay, he's got to come back because he doesn't have enough film. Like I think the NFL scouts have a pretty good sense of what Benjamin Morrison is. Now maybe it limits how high he could go in the first round coming off an injury, but I think there's a pretty good amount of film considering he's been starting since his freshman year at the position. I wanted to throw this one in from Eric Swope. He says during the autograph session, this isn't a question, just more information actually. During the autograph session Saturday night following the game, I did see Ben Morrison and had a chance to talk to him briefly. He was in a good frame of mind, but disappointed to say the least. So that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that, Eric.
I wonder if Ben asked Eric for his autograph. That would have been the smart move.
On the injury front, 2 players have been ruled questionable for Saturday's game. Billy Schrouth, who has been questionable for some time now with a right ankle injury.
Sorry, there is a question that popped up at the bottom that got my attention.
I see that from Mike. And kicker Mitch Jeter has a right hip injury. I think Marcus Freeman called it a groin injury. It's now listed as a hip injury during the game, so he is questionable. How concerned should Notre Dame be if Jeter can't play against Georgia Tech? I almost said Stanford.
Yeah, maybe it would even the playing field a little bit. Georgia Tech's kicker has struggled this year. I think he's 6'11" on field goals, and I think he's made 1 of 40 yards or longer. I mean, it's like 1 of 7, or it's not a very good percentage. So he's good from close in. I think you'd get the same thing from Zach Yoakum. I think we've seen him in practice, and I think you'd feel pretty good with him out to maybe 42 to 43 yards, Tyler. He seemed fairly accurate. He's a little guy, but I think he can handle extra points and shorter field goals. And then you have Eric Goins. I thought he did a good job of kicking off. We've seen a little bit of Marcello Diomede. I couldn't tell you how long his range was, and Marcus Freeman wasn't going to tell the reporter that asked today, let's tell Georgia Tech how far the range is. But I think Notre Dame is in better shape than most teams would be. Obviously, Jeter, you'd love to have him, especially in an indoor game where you'd feel pretty comfortable going all the way out to 55 with him if you needed one from there. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know how much you can trust the field goal kickers that Notre Dame has beyond Mitch Jeter. This is sort of the way that Notre Dame has gone about kicker acquisition has been field goal kickers are coming from the transfer portal, and they're not spending scholarships on that position. So you have walk-ons. Zach Yoakum has been in the program for a few years. And obviously they brought Eric Goins back into college football, I guess, who spent 7 years in the Army after playing at the Citadel. And so they do have other options, but I don't know that any of them are to the level that you would feel comfortable, maybe even kicking beyond 40 yards. So I think the good news is it looks like PATs aren't an issue. Eric is showing off his tie for Irish fan. So yeah, I think it would be a concern when Notre Dame's in a close game. So the way to make it less of a concern is to win in a more lopsided fashion. But I don't know that I have a ton of confidence in those other guys. I at least Zach Yoakum is someone that was sort of thrown in the fire as a kickoffs guy when Bryce McPherson got injured in the preseason ahead of the 2022 season. And so he has some playing experience in big moments. So my guess would be he would be the one that would get the most action. I'm not sure how much those other guys would be asked to help as it relates to field goals. But it'll certainly make for an interesting conversation with Marty Biaggi Tuesday night. He might have a few more reporters talking to him than he does on a normal week. The last update / non-update, and we had a question from Bob Alvey about this, is that Notre Dame did not provide an availability update on Jason Onye, who missed the Stanford game for personal reasons. Whether I misunderstood or mistrusted the availability report.
Now, see, I would have done the same thing you did. He was on the depth chart. He wasn't on the missing chart.
Yeah.
So that to me is.
But it was explained to me today that the Monday report is an injury report. It's not necessarily an availability report, even though it's been called an availability report. And we didn't ask them to call it that. So it's a bit confusing from our end. Maybe this is just us complaining. It just seems like they've introduced this system to make it more clear for us, but they're not making it clear for us. Regardless, we don't have an update on whether or not Jason Onye will be available to play against Georgia Tech. Notre Dame was able to get by without him, thanks in part to Gabriel Rubio returning in the Stanford game. how big of a loss is it if Onye continues to miss games for Notre Dame?
I think eventually it would catch up to them. But, when I was looking at the snap counts and so forth, I mean, Howard Cross is able to handle, it seems like, a lot more than he was earlier in the year. He and Riley Mills are playing very well right now. Gabe Rubio being able to get 21 snaps Saturday, I thought that was significant, and I think he's playing really well as well. As long as they don't have another injury, I think they can, go a little wild. I don't remember how well Jason Onye plays against the unconventional offenses, which Navy and Army would present, but you would think that he would be back here sooner than later since this isn't injury related. But Gabe Rubio was a huge lift. In fact, that's why I asked about those guys. He, Josh Burnham, and then not that Bryce Young was injured, but he's surging. I think those three have really given Notre Dame a lift on its defensive line.
All right, well, let's get into some more questions from our viewers. First one is from Eric Swope, who was our Benjamin Morrison post-game insider. Got to ask the $1 million question to you. Will the legendary Marie from Atlanta be there for the game this weekend? If so, I certainly hope you both have a chance to finally meet in person.
I need to, if Marie's watching, Marie, I know I have an email from you I need to answer, so I will. She is going to be at the game. So, and Tom F., who's in the chats a lot, he was going to be in the game, but he's looking to sell his tickets now. So, and I think he's asked me to help him with that. So if anybody here is interested, let me know.
Reach out to Tom F. Eric's a ticket broker now.
But Marie and I had a bet over the men's basketball bracket, and I was the loser, and she gets to write an article for us at some point. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but she's going to do it for free. So be on the lookout for that.
How about the next time Notre Dame has 2 commitments in the same day? We can give her the second one.
Exactly.
All right. EJ Ricky, is it just me, or does Notre Dame seem to have a high number of significant injuries every season? Other top tier programs seem to sustain injuries, but either they are not as significant or not as many.
I think we would have to chart that. I don't think that we notice it as much. When I'm looking through the game notes of other teams from week to week, it does seem like the other team has them, and maybe it's because we don't make as big a deal about it. I mean, Louisville had a bunch of guys that were injured earlier in their preseason or during their offseason. In fact, the Lacey kid, that was his first game back. So I'm not sure, but I don't think it's a silly question, EJ, because when you have this many, you do start to wonder, okay, what's happening with Notre Dame strong lean into sports science and injury prevention and the state of the art with recovery? Why is it this showing up more? And so I do think it's a legitimate question. And actually, there were a couple of people that came in town that were visiting with Bob Morton and I Friday night. We were standing on the field at Notre Dame, and they were asking about the turf and whether that caused injuries and whether that they would eventually go back to grass. So I don't think it's a silly question. And it would take some research to do it. And I think when we get to the end of the season, we'll probably take a look at that.
Yeah, I think
got too many flip commitments to do it today.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I always, and this is a common refrain of mine, is that fans don't pay attention to other programs nearly as much as the program that they follow. So just because you feel that way, EJ, like I'm guessing there's probably some other fans of other teams that maybe feel that way too. It's incumbent upon us to try to figure out, okay, how do you measure that? Is it true? Is this perception real, or is it just a perception because it's the thing that impacts you the most as a Notre Dame fan? It certainly is concerning, at least in terms of the amount of injuries Notre Dame has sustained this year, and particularly season-ending injuries with a handful of starters now being lost for the season. And but yeah, I wish there was like a database we could look it up in, like the
Right.
NCAA stats database or something like that. But it requires a lot of effort to try to track all that information down. And hopefully we can maybe do some of that research in the offseason.
Speaking of injuries, we should note that Haynes King, Georgia Tech starting quarterback, got injured late in their win over North Carolina Saturday down in Chapel Hill. He did not play the final 3 series. Zach Pyron, their backup, was on the field for the last 3 series when Georgia Tech had a 68-yard run with 16 seconds left. So he did a great job of handing the ball to the guy that ran 68 yards. He's only thrown 7 passes this season. He played a lot more as a true freshman. I think that was before Brent was the head coach. And but he does play like he has played in the short yardage red zone situation. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns. He can run the ball. The bottom line is Brent Key said on radio that Haynes King is day-to-day. They're going to try to practice him tomorrow, so there's a chance that he will be available, but we needed to throw that one out there because that's a significant injury.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Brian Habermill says, did you guys hear that collision between Eli Raridan and the middle linebacker for Stanford from the press box on Jeremiah Love's 39-yard touchdown run? It allowed Love to stay at full speed and score. Eli can block.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Irish needed Eli and the other tight ends to block. They have been good blockers in the past. They haven't had good blocking grades this year. They did a lot better in the game on Saturday. I did not notice that particular thing, and maybe I was distracted by the coming lightning delay. Tyler, did you see it?
No, I didn't see it. I was just looking back because I tweet out the scoring plays, and I highlighted Knapp and Pendleton for good blocks. So Eli Raridan's block was not one that caught my eye live, and I have not gone back and done my rewatch yet. So I will check that out as I start my film analysis for later in the week and see if those tight ends had better games as Pro Football Focus seems to indicate. All right, Ron Roberts says, have you seen enough passing improvement from Leonard to think that he could get this team in a position to win a high-scoring, close game?
I'm not sure they're going to have a lot of high-scoring, close games. I think they're going to have some close games and where he's going to have to play well with, throwing the ball. I was encouraged. I know Stanford's pass efficiency defense was lousy. They were one of the bottom 20 in that. But, I mean, his pass efficiency rating was 40 points higher than it was against Louisville, which was the best in a Notre Dame uniform. It was his best against an FBS team in his career, both at Duke and Notre Dame. I liked a lot of what I saw. And the thing that I liked the best was kind of how he described the evolution of that day, what led up to that day, and the fact that he is seeing the game differently, and he's not offering so much resistance in terms of how he thinks about things and whether he's buying in. And I think that was the mental part of it was also a big part of it for me. So I'm encouraged by it. Now, progress isn't always a perfectly straight line, so we'll see where this goes, but I do feel encouraged that he's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and perfectly straight lines might have been able to play defense better than Stanford did at some points on Saturday. So that will limit Riley
Georgia
Leonard.
Tech is constructed similarly in that they got
a
really
bunch
good
of straight
rush
lines
defense.
back there.
They've got a really good rush defense and not a really good pass efficiency defense. So, but fortunately for them, they played North Carolina that doesn't have any kind of defense. So.
Yeah. In the way that Ron phrased the question, could he get this team in a position to win a high-scoring close game? I think he could, yes. Do I feel extremely confident in that? I wouldn't say that yet. I think he's got to do it more consistently and against more teams that you fear their defense a little bit more than you fear Stanford's defense. But I was encouraged by the Riley Leonard progress, and that's something we wanted to get into a little bit more today as well. Mike DeVoy asks, how good is Georgia Tech's passing game? Do they have wide receivers who will create problems for the defense with Morrison out for the season?
They don't make their passing game is dangerous for a couple reasons. I don't know that you fear that them running past you and so forth, but they don't make mistakes in their passing game. They have allowed 1 sack yard the whole year, 1 sack for 1 yard. So they protect Haynes-King well, and he moves around very well. The second part of that is they don't turn the ball over in their passing game. They have 1 interception. They are number 2 in the country in fewest turnovers. They have 1 fumble lost and 1 interception. So an 8-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And again, Haynes-King, he extends plays. And so I think that's what makes them dangerous, is that he'll run around and you think you're playing great coverage and then somebody pops open. So that's where I feel like they're dangerous in the passing game.
Yeah, and I was looking up some stuff on PFF because I have not done a deep dive on Georgia Tech this week yet. From what I remembered, because I did watch pretty much the full game of the Florida State Georgia Tech game at the beginning of the season. Obviously, that feels like a long time ago from that season opener over in Ireland. But Malik Rutherford was someone that stood out to me. He's a slot receiver. So going back to our conversation early on, that maybe if you had to, probably keeping Jordan Clark in the nickel this game would be the optimum outcome for Notre Dame, because then he's chasing around Malik Rutherford, who's a pretty decent receiver for Georgia Tech. Eric Singleton is their next best receiver, whose numbers aren't as impressive as Rutherford's, but he does have more yards per catch. He's catching passes at a 68.2% rate on his targets. Otherwise, the top-ranked receiving grades are guys who are tight ends for Georgia Tech. So obviously, that's just one little snapshot from Pro Football Focus, but that maybe gives you a little bit more information than what you knew before you joined our live show, Mike. Speaking of Mike Varell, let's get his question in here. Mike Varell asks, who's your favorite former colleague? Please answer in detail.
I'll let you go first, Tyler.
Despite Mike's groveling, although I will give a shout out to Mike. I exchanged messages from Mike from time to time, but I did see today he had a tweet from who's the head coach of Washington? What's his name?
Fish?
Jed Fish. Sorry. Jed Fish had made a comment about the two teams that played in the Oregon and Ohio State game. He said, we all saw what the Ohio State-Oregon game looked like. That was the battle of two $20 million rosters. And that tweet of Mike's got retweeted by Ross Dellinger, who works for Yahoo Sports, and shared his story about sort of the arms race of those teams that were playing on the field there. And Mike's was a good friend of mine during his time when he was with us at the South Bend Tribune. I think probably forever am indebted to Al Lessar as our former coworker, because Al sat next to me in the Monon Bell press box for a DePaul Wabash game, was very kind to me, talked to me about applying to be an intern at the South Bend Tribune, and I did that, and my career path was totally totally reliant on that interaction and Al Lessar's kindness and reaching out to me in that way. So I got to give him the nod over Mike, although I've enjoyed many more beverages with Mike than Al.
I really enjoyed working with Mike for a lot of reasons. None of them have anything to do with Arby's. I've never seen anybody so resistant to want to walk into an Arby's. It was kind of a surprise on a road trip. I think it was the same road trip I got rear-ended in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. But I'll tell you what, Mike came in and he was really creative. He was really funny. And I learned a lot from him, a guy that hadn't been in the business nearly as long as I had. And I always try to keep my eyes open and learn from everybody. And it was easy to learn from him. He has a lot of great ideas.
Yep.
And again, anybody that can make me laugh is high up in my book. I would say Bill Belinsky has to be number one. He was my sports editor for a long time. And Mike is my favorite coworker that hates Arby's.
And if you don't know, Mike Varell is now the sports columnist for the Seattle Times. Mike left and was covering the University of Washington.
He probably left the program before we answered this. We could have said he was the least favorite.
That's true. But I wanted to give Mike Varell a shout out because he deserved it. All right. Jay Gold
get Carter to tune in on the show. Then it go off the rails.
Carter only tunes in when we ask him to be a guest.
Okay.
Next one, Jay Golden 44. Are we overrated or underrated or right where we need to be in the rankings?
The way I have voted, I actually think Notre Dame is underrated, but I don't think they're in a bad position, and I don't think it's off. I mean, you get past the first maybe 5 teams, and then I think 6 through 18 are pretty close, that you could have a lot of those in any order. And believe me, I've heard from a certain fan base in the Big 12 about where I don't have their team ranked.
Yeah.
So we got that going for me, which is nice. But I think Notre Dame, certainly this Ben Morrison thing muddies the water a little bit about how high their ceiling is, but I do think the offense is going to be able to carry more of the load here down the stretch. Again, Tyler and I have different projections on whether this team makes the playoff or not, what the win total is or not. So I do have a higher opinion of it than Tyler does.
All I have to say,
I have them ranked 7th. I ranked Notre Dame 7th this week.
All I have to say to you, Eric, is Gunga Galunga. But no,
which means eternal consciousness, I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
So you got that going for me, which I got that going for me, which is nice. That's what made me think of it, because you said that. I think it's about, like, I don't have very many qualms with it, with Notre Dame's ranking at 12. The Northern Illinois loss is a black mark at this point of the season, and I'm not a voter in any formal poll systems. I would like the polls to be more heavily weighted on what has been done than maybe what people thought of a team or what is projected to happen with a team. And so, I think Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois should haunt them for quite some time as it relates to the polls. So
you think it should? You think they are deserving of that, or you think it will happen that it will haunt them? When you say the word "should," do you mean?
I think it should, as in, as a voter, I should hold that against Notre Dame until the season ends, or even until the very end. It is a big mark on Notre Dame's record, and I don't think that the record to this point of playing 6 games that there's a long enough.
Those are games you have to win, but Oregon had a few games like that. Penn State had a game like that at home.
Right, but you have to win. Winning is different. Yeah, I don't give people that hard of a time for margin of victory. But if you lose, you lose, and that has to sit.
See, I as a voter, I disagree, because I think you can distance yourself if you can show you're not that same team. Now that doesn't mean it's wiped from the record, but I think it carries less weight. The thing I'll also say about Northern Illinois is they should be undefeated. They are the number 5 defense in the country. They're number 1 in third down defense. They are very good in a lot of areas, but they have turned the ball over against everybody except for Notre Dame. That's why they have 2 losses, is because of their turnovers. But still, I mean, a lot of it goes to name brand. If Notre Dame beats Army and Navy, people are going to be, that are casual football fans at least, are going to be way more impressed if they beat USC than if they beat Army and Navy, who are ranked, and USC is not.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree with you there. And the Northern Illinois turnover thing, if Notre Dame, didn't turn it over against Northern Illinois, then Notre Dame probably wins that game too. So that's football comes down to weird things. That's how teams that are worse than the team that they beat. That happens because stuff like that can change the way
the very first playoff year. There was a big controversy about Ohio State even getting into the field because they had lost to a crappy Virginia Tech team at home early in the year. And then you had a couple of teams, TCU and somebody else from that conference at that time, maybe it was Baylor, were around the 3-4-5 mark. And Ohio State beat Wisconsin like 72-0, jumped to number 4, and then ended up winning the championship. And I could see where people think, okay, yeah, that should have been held against them. Even beating Wisconsin 72-0, they did lose to Virginia Tech. But you beat Wisconsin 72-0, you probably could beat Virginia Tech in a rematch 62-0.
All right, Jeff Stevens asks, hey, why didn't Cedric Irving get into the game? I want my place your bet choice back.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, Jeff.
We were talking about it in the press box.
Yeah, well,
maybe he was worried about the Lightning.
I was looking on the sideline at one point. I was like, I don't even see him down there. I don't know where they're hiding him. So I have not like done any research on what happened or what did. Like he wasn't like one of Stanford's leading running backs coming into the game. Which is why I put the number as low as I did. But he had carries.
Micah Ford didn't play.
Right. He had carries. Stanford was dealing with some injuries at the position, so I have no more information
than the Notre Dame game last year either.
Yeah, so very weird. Maybe it's in his
contract.
His contract that he can't play against Notre Dame. All right, those are all the questions I had queued up that aren't injury recruiting related. We've already talked plenty about injuries. So I want to make sure we get to recruiting. Let me ask you about a couple things about Notre Dame's offense before we get to that. Okay. The game flow for Notre Dame made Jadarian Price a more prominent part of Notre Dame's offense than Jeremiah Love in the Stanford game. Can Notre Dame afford to have that happen consistently?
No, because I still think there's too much feast or famine with Jadarian Price. There's too many of those 1-yard losses. And I think those are 4-yard gains with Love. Love got more reps in the game than Price, but Price got more carries by quite a bit. I think Jeremiah Love, I almost called him Julian Love. Jeremiah Love needs to have more touches than Jadarian Price. I don't like the fact they put the or on the depth chart. We don't do it on our depth chart because I think Love is clearly the number one guy.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame has to make sure that Love gets those opportunities. It like his touchdown late almost felt like hey, here's an opportunity because we didn't give you a lot early on. So I was surprised that he didn't get the ball more than he did in the first half, and obviously in the first quarter when he was not doing much. But
Love is a sophomore.
Chris. Yeah, Love's a sophomore, Chris. So I think Notre Dame needs to make sure that. I mean, I guess at least for this game, to get Jadarian Price's confidence back coming off of the fumble in the Louisville game, maybe that's worth like giving him the ball a little bit more to get him back in a place where he's confident and you know that he's capable of carrying the ball without letting it go. All right, I'm going to do this for you. I did not even have a chance to sit down and make my own rankings because that's when I found out that, hey, Notre Dame's going to get a quarterback commitment here in a second. How would you rank Notre Dame's wide receiver and tight ends in terms of importance to ND's passing game moving forward? And the options I listed were Bo Collins. I just was sort of going by the reception total for the season. Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse, Kris Mitchell, Mitchell Evans, Jaden Thomas, Jaden Harrison, Eli Raridan, and Jordan Faison.
Okay, if I didn't screw this up and leave any of those, this is the order I picked. I went with Collins first because I think he's a security blanket, and I do think he can get some mismatches into the boundary. I really would have liked to put Evans first, and maybe they'll get to that point because I think he should be the security blanket, and he can do it in a lot of different places in the field. I put him number 2. I still think Jaden Greathouse is being a little underutilized. I have him at number 3. I have Jordan Faison at number 4, just based on what I know him to be when he's fully healthy. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a complete game, I don't think, where he's been fully healthy. Maybe part of one, part of two. I have Kris Mitchell at number 5. That was his best game. He had his first touchdown, and they need more of that from him. I have Jaden Thomas behind Mitchell. I think Jaden Thomas is a better receiver than Mitchell and probably Faison too, but he's playing Collins' position. Collins is getting a lot of reps. I think JT is an ultimate team player, and he's showing up when he needs to. I just don't think he gets the opportunities. Eli Reardon, a football crush of mine when he was a freshman with just 1 torn ACL. With 2, I don't know that he's going to be that guy this year. And then Jaden Harrison, I love his speed, but I just don't think he's going to get the opportunities that Greathouse deservedly gets. So that's my order.
I think that's a pretty good order. I think.
Well, thank you.
I think if I would be interested in seeing like how dynamic the offense could be if Mitchell is higher on that list.
Correct.
Mitchell being Kris Mitchell. Because he offers some things that I don't know that we've seen a lot from Notre Dame's offense. And Bo Collins has essentially been Notre Dame's deep threat at the wide receiver position, if you can call it a threat, as how few times they've utilized it. But I think Kris Mitchell certainly offers something there.
If you have to worry about Kris Mitchell running, but if you're a defensive coordinator, if you have to worry about him running past your cornerback, and you've got to move that safety to that side of the field a lot, it's going to open more things for Collins, for the tight ends, for the running game.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that with Mike Denbrock here the last time with Will Fuller and to a lesser extent, Kevin Stefferson. But you see how this offense operates much better when you have a threatening field receiver.
Jay Golden asked, why can't we get Mitch Evans more touches?
I think Mitch Evans would ask that too. He played the most reps. They played all 6 tight ends for the first time on Saturday. So Jack Larson made his offensive debut. Evans had the most touches, and he wasn't targeted once, which really surprised me in that game. There weren't a lot of tight end targets, but I think that's a great question and something that maybe I'll ask Mike Denbrock tomorrow night about.
Yeah, I think earlier in the season, I don't know that Mitch Evans was creating a lot of separation. If you look at some of the catches he did have, he had guys sort of all over him, and even some of the targets that he had, that there's been pass interference penalties. Like, I don't know that Mitch Evans was sort of running away from guys or being able to show some of the skills that he showed last year, because I just don't know that Mitchell Evans was back to the same dynamic version of himself yet, coming off the knee injury. So I think that maybe limits, like if Riley Leonard's like not playing with a lot of confidence, even if Mitchell Evans is a very good tight end, that it's like, well, these are tight window throws. Is that really what is that really what Riley Leonard is best suited to make right now? So I think that has limited Notre Dame's ability to lean on Evans early in the season. The hope I would think is that as Evans progresses, as Leonard gets more confidence, that is less of a concern moving forward, and then he can be a big part of Notre Dame's passing game moving forward.
Rajon says he thinks Mitchell Evans' breakout game is coming. I thought it was. I put him as player to watch on Saturday, which shows you, hey, but I had Josh Burnham as a player to watch too, so I was 50% right. Because during the bye week, there was a lot of recalibration in his game. There was a lot of a mental adjustment from the standpoint, look, Mitch, you are 100% now. You can do everything you need to do, and you need to play like that. They also did a lot of film work on what he was doing right, what the old Mitchell Evans had been doing, and I thought that would show up in Saturday. I think eventually we're going to get there, so I agree with you, Rajon, and not just because I like to say Rajon.
I can't blame you for liking to say it. All right, well, let's get into some of the recruiting stuff. Let's start with the quarterback and with Jeff Stevens' question. Tyler, how surprised were you about the new quarterback commit? Did he visit ND for the Stanford game?
I'm curious what your answer is too.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it in the press box.
Yeah, the fact that Eric and I have not talked about it should indicate that it was a surprise. He did not visit for the Stanford game. My understanding is he has not visited since he visited back in June of 2023, which is when he received his offer from Notre Dame, and like a week later he committed to Clemson. And I was even told before we went on here, and I put it on the Insider Lounge message board earlier, that Notre Dame didn't even go out to see him during the bye week. So it helps that he's teammates with two Notre Dame commits. He plays for Brunswick School in Greenwich, Connecticut, with Ethan Long and Maddie Augustine, two of Notre Dame's commits in the 2025 class. I spoke to him after his Notre Dame visit, and he was very, very positive about Notre Dame. So I'm sort of questioning myself, like, why didn't I think this was a more realistic option previously? Like, I came up with a list of several players that I thought Notre Dame would recruit at the quarterback position a couple months ago, and he was not on it. So definitely I was surprised. I think it's certainly a good flip for Notre Dame. Now I think it's worth mentioning, like, I don't think Blake Hebert's in the same class as Deuce Knight in terms of talent. But I don't think that Notre Dame was going, like, I think that's sort of why the Deuce Knight recruitment played out, with it sort of being obvious that he was going to leave in the way he did, because Notre Dame knew, like, hey, we'll let Deuce sort of hang on to us as long as he wants to, because we're not going to be able to get someone as good as Deuce Knight. And so Notre Dame evaluated its options, and Blake Hebert was the one that Notre Dame felt confident in. And he felt confident to take the risk after not really being a Notre Dame recruit for a long time, and being committed to Clemson. It's probably not a great sign for Clemson. I do think Clemson has some pretty good quarterback recruits ahead of him, but Notre Dame does as well. That's folks want to believe that Deuce Knight didn't come to Notre Dame because CJ Carr is here. So an interesting ending to this situation. I mean, it's something that I thought was going to be dragging on until December. So I'm not complaining that it's sort of over, but still more, like, as we speak, more reporting to be done in terms of the background of how this all came together. And why Blake Hebert made the decision to join Notre Dame's class. Brian asked, what are Hebert's measurables? He's 6'3", 214 pounds, according to the Rivals database. Jeff, I don't know if he can enroll early. That is not a question that I've had a chance to ask yet. I don't know. I would be guessing. So.
Who's his little friend from alphabetical order that committed today to the offensive line?
Yeah, Cameron Herron was committed to Iowa, and he did visit Notre Dame this weekend during the Stanford game, which was interesting because Iowa was in the middle of beating up Washington at home when that was happening. So an Indianapolis Warren Central player who's Notre Dame's been evaluating for a long time. He initially was making visits as the friend and teammate of Damian Shanklin, Warren Central defensive end, 4-star recruit who is now committed to LSU. Those visits, they visited Notre Dame a couple times last winter. Herron returned in June for the Irish Invasion, and Notre Dame wasn't certain, like, they liked him, but they weren't certain that they were wanting to use a scholarship on a center, and that's the position that Notre Dame projects Cameron Herron at. And the decision was recently made that, you know what, let's go ahead and push for a center. We're fine with making that switch. Obviously, Pat Coogan is playing there currently. Ashton Craig would be the starting center if not for his injury. I think Sam Pendleton's future probably isn't at center, although he was taking some center reps. So I think the younger part of the depth chart at the center position is open. So Cameron Herron can come in and compete and see if he can make a mark on Notre Dame's class. on the offensive line. He's listed at 6'4", 280. 6'4" seems a little bit generous, I think. I'm not sure he's quite 6'4", but that's what he's listed at in our Rivals database. A 3-star recruit as well. And the other official visitor for Notre Dame this past weekend was Jalen Cooper, the SMU commit, a 4-star wide receiver out of the San Antonio area. We have a story up on InsideNDSports.com if you would like to read his thoughts on the visit. I think Notre Dame's made it a really tough decision for him. I think we'll probably find out in the next week or so if he wants to make that flip from SMU. And Notre Dame's trying to get Cooper to be the 4th receiver in the class. And we'll see if that happens. So I think that's all the recruiting news. Is there anything that I didn't cover, Eric, that you want to follow up on the recruiting front?
I think you did a darn good job. But so really this class is down to what? The wide receivers and the linebackers, basically. And maybe an edge guy.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of a defensive tackle than an edge.
Okay.
Jalen Wiggins is the guy that they've been circling, who's listed as a defensive end, but I think is more of a defensive tackle when he gets to Notre Dame. If he comes to Notre Dame, that is a position that Notre Dame would like him to play eventually. I think they're kicking the tires on their positions. Like, I wouldn't rule out them trying to add another running back late with Daniel Anderson no longer in the class. Tight end has been a position that they have kicked the tires on. I think they're going to probably pass on the tight end position in this class. And then I think that's it. I think those are the other things that Notre Dame could add someone at. And we'll see if Notre Dame keeps any of those recruitments as covert as it kept the Hebert commitment with flipping him from Clemson. All right, folks. Well, that should be it for us tonight on Football Never Sleeps. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thanks to my bookie. Thanks to Eric for putting up with me, even though I've been a bit frazzled today. And we appreciate everyone who is subscribed to us here on the channel. Make sure you are subscribed. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Send us some comments as well. And we'll be back next week on Monday. But later in the week, we'll have our podcast. We'll have Place Your Bets. And then we'll have post-game takeaways and Into the End Zone with Bob Morton post-game because we have a road game. So that means Eric Hansen and Bob Morton will be live on YouTube Saturday night after the game to give you some instant reaction. So make sure you're tuned in for that.
He texted me when Coogan caught the pass. He was so excited.
All right. Yeah, I was excited too. So I don't blame him. I think anyone who played offensive line, when they see an offensive lineman get the ball, they're just like, yes, I love it. So that was a fun moment on Saturday, and hopefully there's some more fun moments ahead for Notre Dame football fans this coming Saturday. All right. See you guys later.